My name is Clara. I am 32 years old, and I am a pastry chef. 3 years ago, I stood in my tiny kitchen, surrounded by the smell of cinnamon and melted sugar, finishing a tray of hand-painted gingerbread cookies. I had spent 72 hours baking them for the Westcott family's annual Christmas Eve gala. For as long as I could remember, that party was the highlight of the year. It was also the only time my parents, Robert and Pamela, seemed to tolerate my presence, usually because they needed someone to refill the champagne flutes or manage the catering staff. At 4 p.m., exactly 4 hours before the party was set to begin, my phone rang. I smiled when I saw my mother's name on the screen, assuming she was calling with a last-minute request for more macarons. "Hello, Mother," I answered, wiping flour from my hands. "I'm just packing them up now." There was a pause on the other end. A cold, heavy silence that made my stomach drop. "Clara," my mother said, her voice lacking even a trace of warmth. "Listen, I've been talking with your sister. About tonight. Is everything okay? Is Serena okay?" "Serena is fine," she replied sharply. "But she has invited a very important guest tonight. A verified influencer from Los Angeles. She wants the party to have a very specific aesthetic for her Instagram stories." I froze. "Okay? I can wear that black dress you like. I can stay in the kitchen if you need me to." "No, Clara," she cut me off. "You don't understand. You just don't fit the vibe. You know how you are awkward. Your clothes are always a little drab, and you tend to hover. Serena thinks it would be better for her brand if you just didn't come this year." I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter, until my knuckles turned white. "You're uninviting me?" "Don't be dramatic," she sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. "We'll send you a plate of leftovers tomorrow. Just stay home. It's for the best." The line went dead. She didn't even say goodbye. I looked at the tray of cookies, hundreds of dollars of ingredients and days of labor meant for a family that viewed me as a prop that ruined their picture-perfect aesthetic. I walked over to the trash can and scraped every single cookie into the bin. They thought they had just canceled a dinner invitation. They had no idea that they had just canceled their access to me forever. Because that night, I didn't stay home. I walked out into the snow, and that decision changed everything. I couldn't stay in my apartment. The silence there was suffocating, broken only by the sound of my neighbors laughing through the thin walls. I wandered the snowy streets of Chicago for 2 hours, the cold air biting my face, until my feet went numb. I didn't have a destination. I just needed to be somewhere where the lights were on. I ended up in front of Jerry's 24/7 diner. It wasn't the Plaza Hotel, where my family was currently sipping vintage champagne. It was a neon-lit greasy spoon, with fogged-up windows, and a sign that buzzed loudly. But when I pushed through the door, the warmth hit me like a wave, the smell of roasted turkey, old coffee, and frying bacon. I took a small booth in the back corner, hiding behind a plastic menu. I ordered a vanilla milkshake and a plate of fries, trying to look like being alone on Christmas Eve was a choice. But then, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. There it was. At the top of my feed, a notification that Serena had gone live. I clicked it. The video showed my parents' living room, transformed into a winter wonderland of white roses and silver velvet, the specific aesthetic I apparently didn't fit. My mother was laughing, holding a glass of wine. My father was carving the turkey. And there were 4 place settings, just 4. There wasn't even an empty chair where I should have been. They hadn't just uninvited me. They had erased me. It was as if I had never existed at all. The realization cracked something open inside me. I put my phone down and pressed a paper napkin to my eyes, trying to stifle a sob. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to melt into the vinyl seat and never come back. "Excuse me, dear." The voice was soft but commanding. I froze, quickly wiping my eyes. I looked up to see an elegant woman standing by my table. She had silver hair styled in a chic bob and eyes that looked like they had spent a lifetime actually listening to people. This was Vivian Sterling. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice shaking. "Just allergies." Vivian raised one perfectly arched eyebrow. She didn't buy it for a second. She glanced back at a large, boisterous family sitting 2 tables away. then looked back at me. "Honey," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Nobody cries into a milkshake on Christmas Eve because of allergies." And frankly, my husband Arthur just told a joke so terrible that we desperately need a distraction. "We have an empty seat. Why don't you come save us?" I shook my head immediately. "Oh no, I couldn't intrude. You're with your family." "You're not intruding. I'm inviting," she smiled, and it was the warmest thing I had seen all day. "Besides, my son Leo keeps trying to start a debate about architecture, and I need backup. Come on, don't make me beg." I looked at my cold fries. Then I looked at the screen of my phone, where my biological family was celebrating my absence. Then I looked at this stranger offering me a seat at her table. For the first time in my life, I decided to go where I was wanted. I slid into the vinyl booth, squeezing in between Vivian and her son Leo. I expected that polite, pitying silence that usually follows when an outsider joins a tight-knit group. But the moment I sat down, the wall of isolation I had built around myself dissolved. "I'm Arthur," Vivian's husband said, extending a hand across the table. He had a warm, crinkled smile. "And this is our son, Leo. Ignore anything he says about politics or football. He thinks he knows everything because he reads." "I'm Clara." I managed a small smile, wiping the last tear from my cheek. "Thank you for rescuing me." "No rescue needed," Leo grinned. He was handsome, with dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Mom just collects strays. Last Christmas it was a golden retriever. This year, we upgraded to a human." The table erupted in laughter, not polite, stifled laughter, but loud, genuine joy. It was a sound I wasn't used to. In the Westcott house, laughter was usually at someone's expense. Here, it was a shared blanket. As we ate, Arthur asked what I did for a living. I hesitated, my stomach tightening. My biological parents usually introduced me as just a cook or tried to change the subject to Serena's modeling career. "I'm a pastry chef," I said quietly, bracing for the usual dismissal. "I work at a small bakery downtown." "A pastry chef?" Leo's eyes lit up. He leaned forward, genuinely interested. "That's incredible. I'm an architect, which is basically just baking with concrete and stress. You actually build things that make people happy." I stared at him. Artistry. For 30 years, my family had treated my career as manual labor, something to be embarrassed about. These strangers, people I had known for 20 minutes, treated it like magic. We talked for 2 hours. I ate lukewarm fries and drank a milkshake, but it felt like the finest meal of my life because, for the first time, I wasn't invisible. When the check came, I reached for my wallet, desperate to prove I wasn't a burden. "Put that away," Arthur said firmly, waving his hand. As we bundled up in our coats to face the Chicago wind, Vivian pressed a cream-colored card into my hand. It had her number on it. "Clara," she said, her voice cutting through the cold air. "Family isn't a noun. It is a verb. It is what you do, not just whose blood you share. We do Sunday dinners every week. If you need a place to belong, the door is unlocked." I stood in the snow, watching them walk to their car, holding that card like it was a lifeline. I realized then that I had felt more loved in 2 hours by strangers than I had in 3 decades by the people who were supposed to be my parents. And I knew, with sudden clarity, that I was going to make that phone call. I didn't call Vivian the next day. The trauma of being discarded by my own parents was deep, and a part of me felt like I would be imposing. But Vivian Sterling wasn't the kind of woman who made empty offers. She texted me the following Tuesday. "Arthur is attempting to make a pot roast. If you don't come on Sunday to supervise, we might all get food poisoning. Please save us." I went, and then I went the Sunday after that. Over the next 6 months, the Sterling's house in the suburbs became the only place where I could breathe. I stopped shrinking myself to fit into a corner. I started taking up space. I brought my work with me, boxes of lemon tarts with perfectly torched meringue, chocolate eclairs that made Arthur close his eyes in bliss, and macarons that Leo claimed were too pretty to eat before eating 6 of them. In the Westcott house, my baking was expected, a service I performed to earn my keep. In the Sterling house, it was celebrated. I taught Arthur how to properly glaze a ham. I debated politics with Vivian over wine. And Leo. Leo and I moved from polite strangers to friends, and then to something more. He didn't look at me like I was the awkward sister. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Meanwhile, from the family who shared my DNA, there was only silence. I didn't receive a Christmas card. I didn't get a birthday text. For the first time in my life, I stopped chasing them. I stopped performing for crumbs of affection. Then, 8 months after the diner, my phone buzzed with a text from Serena. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it, foolishly hoping for an apology. "Hey, I'm getting engaged next month. Need 300 of those vanilla bean cupcakes you make. Since you haven't sent a gift yet, can you do these for free? The exposure will be great for your little bakery." The old Clara would have said yes immediately, desperate to be included. But I wasn't that person anymore. I looked at Leo, who was laughing with his parents in the living room, a room where I was loved simply for existing. I typed my reply with steady fingers. "Congratulations on the engagement. My rate for wedding orders is $500, payable up front. Let me know if you want me to send the invoice." 3 dots bubbled up. Then came the response. "You are so selfish. Mom was right about you." I didn't cry. I didn't apologize. For the first time in my life, I pressed the block button. It didn't feel like a loss. It felt like taking my first breath of fresh air in 30 years. 2 years passed, and life with the Sterlings settled into a beautiful rhythm. The bakery I had always dreamed of opening was finally a reality, thanks to Arthur's business advice and Leo's architectural drawings for the renovation. One snowy evening in December, almost exactly 2 years after the night I was uninvited from Christmas, Leo walked into the kitchen while I was frosting a cake. He didn't ask me to dinner. He didn't make a speech. He simply got down on one knee in the middle of a cloud of flour and pulled out a small velvet box. "Clara," he said, his voice steady. "I know your family taught you that love is conditional. I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that it's not. I want to choose you, every single day." I said yes before he could even finish the question. The engagement bliss lasted exactly 3 weeks. It ended the moment we sat down with the wedding planner to design the invitations. "Traditionally," she said, tapping the top line with her pen, "this is where we list the parents of the bride. Mr. and Mrs. Name requests the honor of your presence." "So, what names are we putting here?" I stared at the blank line. The silence in the room grew heavy. I hadn't spoken to Robert or Pamela Westcott in 2 years. They hadn't called when I opened my bakery. They hadn't called when I got engaged. Putting their names on my wedding invitation felt like a lie. But, leaving the line blank? That felt like a public admission that I was unwanted. It was a hole on the page that matched the hole in my chest. I excused myself and ran to the bathroom, trying to stifle my tears so I wouldn't ruin the appointment. That was where Vivian found me 10 minutes later, sitting on the edge of the sink, clutching the sample invitation. "I can't do it, Vivian," I sobbed. "I can't put their names. But if I don't, everyone will know. Everyone will see that I'm alone." Vivian took the paper from my hand. She didn't look sad. She looked like the federal judge she used to be, sharp, decisive, and ready to deliver a verdict. "You aren't alone, Clara," she said firmly. She sat down beside me. "There is something I used to handle in family court. It's rare, but it exists. It's called adult adoption." I blinked, wiping my eyes. "Adoption? But I'm 34. The law recognizes what the heart already knows," Vivian said, her voice softening. "Family can be created, not just inherited. If you agree, Arthur and I don't just want to be your in-laws. We want to be your parents. Legally. Officially. On your birth certificate and on that invitation." I looked at this woman who had found me crying in a diner 2 years ago and had never stopped holding my hand since. "You want to adopt me? We've considered you our daughter since that first pot roast," she smiled. "We were just waiting for you to be ready to make it official." The process of adult adoption is surprisingly rigorous. It involves background checks, legal filings, and a formal hearing. But with Vivian, a retired federal judge guiding me, it didn't feel like bureaucracy. It felt like a sacred ceremony. 3 months before the wedding, we stood in a quiet courtroom in downtown Chicago. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Arthur wore his best suit, and Vivian held my hand so tightly I thought she might cut off my circulation. The presiding judge, a former colleague of Vivian's, looked down at me over his spectacles. "Clara," he said gently, "do you understand that by signing this order, you are permanently severing your legal ties to Robert and Pamela Westcott? You are forfeiting any future inheritance, any legal claim, and any familial status with them." I didn't hesitate. I thought about the Christmas Eve text message. I thought about the years of being treated as an unpaid servant. I thought about the empty seat at their table. "I understand," I said, my voice steady. The judge smiled and banged his gavel. It was the best sound I had ever heard. "Then it is ordered," he declared. "From this day forward, you are legally the daughter of Arthur and Vivian Sterling." When the clerk handed me the new birth certificate, my hands shook. Seeing my name, Clara Sterling, printed in black and white changed something in my DNA. I wasn't just Leo's fiancée or the nice baker anymore. I was a daughter. I had a legacy. I had a home that couldn't be taken away by a whim or an aesthetic choice. We celebrated with champagne at lunch, and then I went straight back to the wedding planner's office. "I have the information for the invitations," I told her, sitting down. She pulled up the digital proof, the cursor blinking on that painful, empty line under parents of the bride. "Great," she said. "What are we putting?" I took the pen and wrote it out myself, pressing down hard enough to indent the paper. "Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Vivian Sterling request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Clara." I looked at the words. There was no shame anymore, no gap, no silence, just the names of the people who had chosen me. I sent the invitations to the printer that afternoon. I knew, inevitably, that the Westcotts would find out. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of their reaction. I was a Sterling now, and Sterlings didn't cower. The wedding day arrived on a pristine June afternoon. We chose a private botanical garden for the ceremony, a place lush with greenery and white roses, elegant, understated, and completely devoid of the aesthetic pressure I had grown up with. When I looked in the mirror, wearing a dress I had chosen with Vivian, I didn't see the awkward girl my mother used to criticize. I saw a woman who was loved. The ceremony was flawless. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and the crowd cheered, I felt the last lingering threads of my old life snap away. I was Clara Sterling now. I was safe, but I should have known that the Westcotts wouldn't let me go that easily. While we were taking photos, a guest posted a picture of us on Instagram, tagging the location. Serena, who spent her entire life scrolling for validation, saw it. She didn't just see her sister getting married. She saw her sister marrying into one of Chicago's most prestigious families. She saw the wealth, the status, and the connections she had been excluded from. Driven by a mix of jealousy and entitlement, my biological family got in their car and drove straight to the venue. The reception was in full swing inside a glass-walled pavilion when the disturbance started at the main entrance. I was laughing at a toast Arthur was making when the music suddenly faltered. Heads turned toward the doors. "You can't go in there," I heard a security guard's voice, firm and loud. "This is a private event. Get your hands off me." My mother's voice screeched, shrill enough to cut through the chatter. "I am the mother of the bride. That is my daughter in there, and you cannot keep us out." My stomach dropped. I froze, clutching my champagne glass so hard I thought it might shatter. I looked toward the entrance and saw them. They looked ridiculous. My mother was wearing a flashy cocktail dress that was too bright for the afternoon. My father looked furious, and Serena was actually holding her phone up, recording the scene as they shoved past the bewildered security team. They didn't look like loving parents arriving to celebrate. They looked like predators who realized they had let a prize slip through their fingers. "Clara!" my mother shouted, spotting me across the room. She marched past the stunned guests, feigning a look of tearful joy that didn't reach her cold eyes. "Oh, thank God we made it. How could you forget to send our invitation?" The room went deadly silent. Beside me, Leo's jaw tightened, and he stepped in front of me protectively. But it was Arthur who moved first. He stood up from the head table, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked toward them with the terrifying calm of a man protecting his own. Pamela Westcott marched into the reception hall, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She ignored the murmurs of the guests and the security guards trailing behind her. Serena followed close behind, her phone held high, live streaming the intrusion as if it were a reality TV episode rather than a private family moment. "Clara!" Pamela's voice was sharp, the same tone she used to scold caterers. She stopped a few feet away from us, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Tell these guards to back off immediately. How dare you treat your own family like criminals?" I felt Leo's hand tighten on my waist, ready to intervene, but I stepped forward. For 30 years, I had shrunk in her presence. Today, standing in my wedding dress, I felt 10 feet tall. "I didn't invite you, Pamela," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent room. "And this is a private event. You didn't invite us?" Pamela let out an incredulous, theatrical laugh, playing to the audience of stunned guests. "We are your parents. I gave birth to you. You don't just forget to invite the people who gave you life." "I didn't forget," I replied calmly. "I made a choice. Just like you made a choice 3 years ago on Christmas Eve. You told me I didn't fit the aesthetic. You told me not to come home." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Serena chimed in, rolling her eyes at her phone camera. "That was years ago, Clara. Stop being so dramatic. Just let us sit at the head table, and we can pretend this never happened. Forgive me?" I looked at my sister, who was currently broadcasting my wedding to her followers without my consent. "You aren't here because you love me. You're here because you saw the location tag. You're here because I married a Sterling, and you realized you couldn't afford to ignore me anymore." Pamela's face twisted. She stepped closer, trying to grab my arm, her fingernails digging into the lace of my sleeve. "You ungrateful girl. We gave you everything. You don't get to just erase us because you married rich. I am your mother. That gives me a right to be here. Actually," a voice rang out, sharp and authoritative as a gavel strike. "It doesn't." Vivian Sterling stepped out from behind the head table. She wasn't smiling. She looked every inch the federal judge she used to be. She positioned herself directly between me and Pamela. "Who are you?" Pamela sneered, looking Vivian up and down. "I," Vivian declared, loud enough for the back row to hear, "am the mother of the bride." The silence in the reception hall was absolute. Every guest was watching as Vivian Sterling, former federal judge, stood toe-to-toe with Pamela Westcott. "You?" Pamela scoffed, looking at Vivian's elegant mother-of-the-bride gown with disdain. "You're just some woman she met. You aren't her family. I am her family. I gave birth to her." "Biology is an accident, Mrs. Westcott," Vivian replied, her voice calm but carrying the weight of a gavel strike. "Family is a choice. And 6 months ago, in a court of law, Clara made hers." Vivian signaled to the DJ, who cut the music completely. Then, she turned back to Pamela. "Clara was legally adopted by Arthur and me this past January. The paperwork is filed. The birth certificate has been amended. Legally. You are strangers to her." Pamela staggered back as if slapped. That's impossible. She's 34 years old. "It is called adult adoption," Vivian said. "And it is very real. It means she is legally a Sterling. It means we are her next of kin. And it means you have absolutely no claim on her or this wedding." "You stole our daughter!" Robert Westcott finally spoke up, stepping forward with a flushed face. "You manipulated her." Arthur Sterling, the man who had welcomed me with a joke and a warm meal when I was shivering in a diner, stepped forward. He wasn't a loud man, but his voice shook with suppressed anger. "We didn't steal anything, Robert," Arthur said firmly. "You gave her away. We just picked up what you threw out." Arthur looked around the room, ensuring everyone heard. 3 years ago, you left this young woman wandering the streets on Christmas Eve because she didn't fit your aesthetic. You told her she wasn't good enough for your picture-perfect holiday. He pointed a finger at Robert. We found her crying in a diner booth. We fed her. We listened to her. We treated her like a human being. And do you know what she told us? She said she couldn't remember the last time she felt like she mattered to you. That's not. Pamela tried to interrupt, but Arthur cut her off. We didn't steal your daughter, Arthur finished, putting his arm around my shoulders. We just showed her what a father is supposed to act like. The rest was her choice. I looked at my biological parents. Pamela was pale, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Serena had lowered her phone, the live stream forgotten in the face of genuine humiliation. You heard him, I said quietly. I didn't replace you, Mom. You abandoned me first. Now, please leave. Arthur nodded to the security team. As the security guards escorted the Westcotts out of the venue, I expected to feel guilty. That was my old programming, the instinct to apologize for taking up space. But as the doors closed behind them, I didn't feel guilt. I felt weightless. The rest of the wedding was a blur of joy. I danced with Arthur, my father, who held me with a pride Robert Westcott had never shown. I cut the cake with Leo, surrounded by people who were cheering for us, not for the photo op. The fallout came the next morning, of course. My phone blew up with texts from extended family members I hadn't seen in years, accusing me of breaking my mother's heart and being cruel. On social media, Serena posted a long, vague status about toxic people and jealousy, positioning herself as the victim of my success. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I simply blocked every single number and account connected to the Westcott name. It wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of peace. 2 weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived. It was from Serena. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. She wrote that Mom and Dad were devastated and that I had humiliated them publicly. But then came the kicker. We are willing to move past this if you are. Family is complicated, Clara. We still love you, even if you think you're too good for us now. I read it twice. Then, I folded it up and put it in the bottom of a drawer. I realized that she would never understand. She truly believed that I was the problem because I refused to be their doormat anymore. And for the first time, I was okay with being misunderstood by people who were committed to mistreating me. A year has passed since then. Leo and I bought a house just 20 minutes away from Arthur and Vivian. The bakery is thriving, but my biggest project is currently sleeping in the crib next to me. We named her Eleanor, after the woman who saw a crying stranger in a diner and decided to be her mother. Sometimes, late at night, I look at my daughter and I make her a promise. I promise she will never have to earn her seat at our table. She will never have to shrink herself to be loved. She is chosen, simply because she exists. They say blood is thicker than water, but the full quote is actually, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we inherit. If you are watching this, and you feel like the black sheep or the extra in your own family, please listen to me. You are not the problem. You are just in the wrong home. Don't be afraid to walk out the door. Your real family is out there, maybe in a diner, maybe in a park, maybe right around the corner waiting to welcome you home.